When loyalty starts to feel like self-abandonment, there are men who never leave, men who always show up, men whose word is reliable enough that no one ever questions it. They are praised quietly, trusted automatically, counted on without discussion, and because of that, no one ever really asks how much it costs them to stay. At first, loyalty feels simple, almost clean. You commit, you endure, you do what you said you would do. That's how you were raised. That's what strength looked like. That's what made you respectable. So you stayed, not because staying felt good, but because leaving felt wrong, and for a long time, that was enough. Loyalty is one of the first virtues most men are taught, sometimes explicitly, sometimes by watching. You learn that real men don't quit, they don't complain, they don't make their discomfort other people's problem. They endure quietly and call it character. You learn that staying is noble, that walking away is selfish, that endurance is proof of love. And when you're young, that lesson feels clean and honorable, but no one teaches you how to recognize the moment when loyalty stops being a choice and starts becoming a reflex. No one teaches you how to tell the difference between commitment and fear. At first, it's small. You say yes when you're tired. You stay quiet when something doesn't sit right. You tell yourself it's not worth the conflict. You minimize your needs because other people seem to need more. You tell yourself you're being mature, reasonable, strong, and maybe you are, but slowly something else begins to happen. Your inner life starts to shrink, not dramatically, not all at once, just enough that you don't notice it happening. You stop voicing preferences. You stop naming disappointments. You stop asking for things that feel inconvenient to request. You tell yourself, this is what adulthood looks like. This is what responsibility feels like. And because you're capable, because you're steady, because you don't collapse, the world begins to take you at your word. You seem fine, so no one checks. This is the strange paradox of being reliable. The more dependable you are, the less visible your strain becomes. People assume that because you can carry something, you should. And eventually, because you always do, they stop noticing the weight at all. You are not mistreated. You are simply relied upon. And that reliance becomes invisible labor. You don't wake up one morning empty. There is no dramatic breaking point, no explosion, no betrayal, no sudden clarity. There is just a quiet accumulation, a growing sense that you are present in everyone else's life, but oddly absent in your own, a low-grade exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix, a resentment you don't want to admit exists because resentment feels ungrateful. You start to feel guilty for being tired. After all, you chose this, didn't you? That question lingers longer than it should because somewhere along the way, choice became habit and habit became identity. You became the loyal one, the rock, the steady presence, the man who doesn't leave. And once people assign you that role, they don't imagine you stepping out of it. They don't ask if you still want to be there. You begin to notice something unsettling. Your loyalty is expected but rarely acknowledged. Your sacrifice is assumed but seldom discussed. You are appreciated in abstract terms but not actively cared for. And when you feel the faint urge to pull back, to renegotiate, to speak up, something stops you. Not obligation, fear, not fear of being alone, fear of becoming the villain in someone else's story. You are afraid that if you say what this is costing you, people will see you differently, that they'll call you selfish, weak, ungrateful, that they'll say, why now? Or worse, why didn't you say something sooner? So you stay quiet, you stay loyal, and the resentment grows, not because you hate anyone, but because you are slowly abandoning yourself to keep everyone else comfortable. This is the moment most men don't talk about. The moment when loyalty stops feeling like integrity and starts feeling like self-betrayal, not because anyone asked you to disappear, but because no one noticed when you did. You realize you've been loyal to roles instead of relationships. to expectations instead of mutuality. You've been protecting the image of being dependable more than the reality of being alive. And the truth hits gently, then all at once. You are exhausted not because life is hard, but because you are carrying parts of it that were never meant to be carried alone. This realization doesn't come with clarity about what to do next. It comes with discomfort. Because if you admit that staying has cost you something, you also have to confront a harder truth. You were not trapped. You were afraid to disappoint, afraid to disrupt the narrative, afraid to be the one who changes. Men are rarely taught how to leave with integrity. We are taught how to endure with silence. So when endurance becomes corrosive, we don't know what the alternative looks like. We think the only options are abandonment or martyrdom, but those are false choices. Loyalty was never meant to require erasure. Commitment was never meant to demand self-neglect. Sacrifice was never meant to be infinite and unreciprocated. Real loyalty is mutual. It breathes, it allows renegotiation, it leaves room for honesty. There is nothing noble about disappearing quietly. There is nothing honorable about carrying resentment in silence while everyone else believes you are fine. Strength is not measured by how much you can endure without complaint. It is measured by whether you can tell the truth without becoming cruel. For many men, the most terrifying realization is this: no one was forcing you to stay, you were enforcing it yourself, because leaving felt like failure, because staying felt familiar, because you confused loyalty with self-denial. The moment you see this clearly, something shifts, not outwardly, inwardly. You begin to understand that resentment is not a moral flaw. It is a signal. It is information. It is your inner life asking to be acknowledged. You don't need to burn everything down. You don't need to justify your exhaustion. You don't need permission to name what something is costing you. You are allowed to say, "This no longer feels like loyalty. It feels like I'm disappearing." Some people will understand, some won't. That's unavoidable. But clarity is kinder than silent resentment, and loyalty that requires silence was never sustainable to begin with. There's a quiet courage in choosing yourself without vilifying anyone else, in saying, "I can still care, but I can't keep erasing myself to prove it," in redefining loyalty as presence with boundaries, not endurance without end. The man who always stays eventually has to decide something, not whether to leave, but whether he deserves to be fully present in his own life. Because real loyalty doesn't require a man to disappear, and if it does, it was never loyalty, it was compliance.